Forests have always carried a dual nature, peaceful sanctuaries by day, but when darkness falls, they become places where the line between the natural and the unknown begins to blur. Across America, countless trails wind through ancient trees, but some of these paths lead not to safety, but to silence. The kind of silence left behind when people vanish without a trace. These are not just stories whispered around campfires or fragments of old folklore. They are documented disappearances, official reports, and chilling accounts from families and rescuers who never found answers. Each case holds its own bizarre twist, belongings found carefully placed, voices heard where no one should be, entire search parties confounded by forests that seem to erase those who enter. Tonight, we journey into America's most cursed woods, where every tree may hold a secret, and where not all who walk in are ever seen again. Black Hills National Forest. The Vanishing Hikers. The Black Hills of South Dakota are a place of striking beauty, rolling green ridges, towering pines, and trails that seem endless. To most who visit, this landscape feels serene, even inviting. Yet beneath its calm exterior lies a far darker reputation, one whispered among locals and cemented by decades of strange disappearances. For some, the Black Hills are not just a destination for hikers and campers, but a place where people step off the trail and are never seen again. One of the most unsettling stories begins like so many others, with a group of friends setting out on what was meant to be an ordinary weekend escape. They followed marked paths, carried supplies, and promised families they would return by nightfall. But when the sun dipped behind the ridges, only silence returned. Their cars remained parked at the trailhead, but the hikers themselves had seemingly dissolved into the wilderness. Search teams combed the area for days. Helicopters circled overhead, volunteers scoured the underbrush, and dogs followed scent trails deep into the trees. Yet each trail abruptly ended as if the forest itself had swallowed the missing. Rescuers later admitted that their compasses faltered in certain sections of the hills, swinging wildly as though repelled by some invisible force. And at night, searchers reported the strangest thing of all: voices echoing faintly between the trees, calling out names, though no one could ever be found. Personal belongings turned up weeks later, scattered miles apart. A backpack resting neatly against a rock, shoes placed side by side as if arranged with care, and even a half-burned map wedged into the crook of a tree. Investigators could never determine whether these objects were clues left behind by desperate hikers, or signs of something more sinister toying with those who entered the forest. Locals point to native legends that long predate the disappearances. They speak of spirits tied to the land, guardians who resent intrusion, and warnings that some places were never meant to be crossed. Even modern campers describe the sensation of being watched, of whispers carried on the wind, and of footsteps that stop the moment they turn to look. The most chilling aspect of these vanishings is not what was found, but what wasn't. No bodies, no evidence of animal attacks, no trace of struggle, just the uncanny impression that the hikers stepped out of reality and into something else, leaving behind only fragments of their existence. The Black Hills, beautiful as they are, remain a paradox, a place that welcomes thousands each year, yet quietly keeps its secrets. And for the families left behind, the question lingers. Did their loved ones get lost, or did they encounter something the forest refuses to reveal? If the Black Hills can claim lives so quietly, imagine what might lurk in other woods where history itself is steeped in blood, folklore, and fear. Because America holds more than one cursed forest, and the next is infamous not just for disappearances, but for an entire region wrapped in mystery. Freetown-Fall River State Forest. The Triangle of Fear, in southeastern Massachusetts, lies a stretch of wilderness that has earned a reputation so dark it is now known as the heart of the infamous Bridgewater Triangle. Freetown-Fall River State Forest appears, at first glance, like any other quiet patch of New England land: dense woods, winding trails, and ponds that mirror the sky. But beneath the canopy, stories unfold that defy both logic and explanation. Here, disappearances are just one chapter in a long, unsettling book of paranormal history. This forest sits on land once inhabited by the Wampanoag people, who warned outsiders of sacred grounds that should never be disturbed. Legends speak of a lingering curse born from broken promises and violent clashes. Whether myth or memory, the atmosphere of this forest seems to echo those warnings. Visitors often describe a sudden heaviness in the air, as though the trees themselves are watching with quiet disapproval. Disappearances here carry patterns too strange to ignore. Hikers set out on short afternoon walks only to vanish before dinner. Experienced woodsmen who knew the land better than most left no tracks. Search parties found belongings left behind in neat arrangements, much like the Black Hills cases. But here, the unease is compounded by sightings of inexplicable phenomena. Witnesses tell of glowing orbs floating through the trees at night, leading some deeper into the forest before vanishing. Others report phantom fires that appear on the horizon, burning brightly, yet leaving behind no ash, no smoke, no trace that they were ever there. It is as though the forest lures the curious, then erases them completely. And then there are the voices. Countless searchers and visitors have described the unnerving experience of hearing someone call their name from a distance. When they respond, silence. Some describe footsteps pacing just behind them, only to turn around and find nothing but empty trails. A few admit to fleeing in terror, certain that the forest was trying to draw them further in. Not all accounts end in vanishing, but even survivors carry scars of confusion. One man claimed he wandered for hours along paths he had walked many times before, only to find himself circling back to the same clearing again and again, as though trapped in a maze that defied natural geography. When rescuers finally found him, dazed and dehydrated, he insisted the forest had been rearranging itself around him. For locals, these disappearances blend seamlessly with centuries of lore. They tell of shadow figures darting between trees, of a large black dog with glowing eyes stalking travelers, and even of ritualistic sites hidden deep within the woods. Police records confirm strange gatherings and unexplained evidence left behind in certain clearings. While skeptics call them urban legends, families who have lost loved ones know better. The line between story and reality here is razor thin. What unsettles investigators most is how often the missing are never found. Despite the forest being relatively small compared to the vast expanses of the Smoky Mountains or Alaskan wilderness, the implication is chilling. If people can disappear forever in a place so confined, perhaps the forest is not merely losing them, but holding on to them. The Freetown-Fall River State Forest continues to stand as a living contradiction. Beautiful in the daylight, yet dripping with fear once shadows fall. And as terrifying as it is, it's only one of many. Because further south, in the Smoky Mountains, another disappearance would captivate the nation, not for the supernatural stories, but for the heartbreaking innocence of its victim. The Great Smoky Mountains, the boy who was never found. The Great Smoky Mountains stretch across Tennessee and North Carolina, drawing millions of visitors each year. Families camp beneath towering trees, children splash in streams, and hikers weave through ridges that touch the clouds. On the surface, it is a picture of serenity. But beneath the beauty lies a story that haunts the park to this very day, the disappearance of 6-year-old Dennis Martin. It was Father's Day weekend, 1969. The Martin family gathered for their annual camping trip in Spence Field, a grassy meadow high in the Smokies. Children laughed, running in and out of the trees, playing hide and seek. Dennis, small for his age but full of energy, slipped behind a bush to surprise the adults. That was the last moment anyone ever saw him. Within seconds, his hiding place was empty. The boy had simply vanished. Panic erupted. The Martins searched frantically, calling his name until their voices broke. Other campers joined in. Soon, rangers organized one of the largest search efforts in national park history. Over 1,000 people scoured the mountains. Green Berets, volunteers, bloodhounds, all converging on Spence Field. Yet days passed, and Dennis never appeared. What made this case so disturbing were the whispers from the forest itself. Some searchers claimed their dogs refused to follow certain trails, whimpering as if something unseen blocked the way. A family, camping miles away, reported hearing a scream unlike anything human echoing across the ridges the same afternoon Dennis disappeared. Their description was chilling, a sound that blended pain and something primal. Despite weeks of searching, not a single shred of Dennis's clothing or belongings was ever recovered. The terrain was rough, yes, but even in the harshest environments, some trace usually emerges: a shoe, a piece of fabric, a footprint. In this case, the mountains gave back nothing but silence. Theories multiplied. Some believed Dennis became lost and fell victim to the elements, though searchers covered every ravine and river nearby. Others whispered about wild animals, though experts doubted even a predator could erase all evidence. And then there were the darker speculations that Dennis had been taken by something or someone hiding within the woods. The involvement of Green Berets, unexplained and never clarified, only deepened suspicion. Why would an elite military group quietly join a missing child case unless something far stranger was at play? For the Martin family, the pain never ended. They left the park without answers, forced to live with a question mark where a son should have been. To this day, Dennis's disappearance remains one of the Smoky Mountains' most unsettling mysteries, a case that chills even seasoned investigators. The Smokies, with their mist-draped ridges and endless trails, still hold secrets in their silence. Visitors hike through, unaware they're treading ground where a child simply blinked out of existence. And that's the most haunting thought of all. If a little boy can vanish in broad daylight surrounded by family and searchers, then perhaps the forest itself chooses who is taken and who is spared. But the Smokies are not alone. Across the world, another forest carries the same aura of dread, a place so strange it bends time itself. And though it lies in Romania, its legends mirror the cursed landscapes of America. It is known as the Hoia Baciu Forest, and its stories may help us glimpse what hides behind the veil. Hoia Baciu Forest. The forest that bends time. Though our journey centers on America's forests, to understand their mysteries, we must glance across the ocean to Romania's Hoia Baciu Forest. Known worldwide as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, this place mirrors the strange vanishings of U.S. wilderness. Small in size but vast in legend, Hoia Baciu has terrified locals for centuries. They say those who enter sometimes never return, and those who do often come back changed. The forest gained international attention in the 1960s, when a military technician photographed a classic disc-shaped object hovering above the trees. Soon after, hikers began reporting missing time, sudden burns on their skin, and disorientation that felt less like getting lost, and more like stepping into another dimension. Some emerged hours later, convinced only minutes had passed. Others wandered for days, confused and unable to explain where they had been. Even the land itself resists explanation. In the heart of the forest lies a perfectly circular clearing where no trees grow, despite fertile soil. Scientists have tested it, skeptics have measured it, yet no answer ever sticks. Locals whisper that it's a portal, a place where reality thins, and those who walk across it may slip into places from which they never return. Disappearances here carry unsettling similarities to American cases. Belongings are found neatly arranged. Survivors recall strange lights, phantom voices, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. What chills many is how these accounts echo what searchers describe in the Black Hills or the Smoky Mountains. How can forests separated by continents tell the same dark story? Skeptics argue that legends grow where fear takes root, that stress and disorientation explain the strangeness. But Hoya Baciu refuses to be so easily dismissed. Too many photographs show unexplained shadows. Too many hikers tell the same stories without ever having met. And too many vanish without a trace, leaving only questions behind. The parallels are haunting. If Romania has its cursed forest, then perhaps America's vanishings are not isolated tragedies, but pieces of a wider, more universal phenomenon. Forests across the world may share a hidden truth. They are not merely landscapes, but thresholds, and those who cross them risk walking into something beyond human understanding. Which brings us back to the American wilderness. Because on the far side of the continent, another forest hides its secrets in fog, where even seasoned explorers vanish as if the mist itself were alive. The Olympic National Forest waits, holding stories as chilling as any whispered in Transylvania. The Olympic National Forest. Into the mist. On the western edge of Washington state lies the Olympic National Forest, a place where towering evergreens scrape the sky and rain seems to fall endlessly. It is a land of rivers, moss-draped trails, and mountains that vanish into mist. To most visitors, the fog feels enchanting, like stepping into a fairy tale. But for others, it has been the last thing they ever saw. Because in these woods, the mist is not just weather, it is a veil where people disappear. Hikers tell eerily similar stories. The day begins clear, the path well marked. Then, without warning, a heavy fog descends, swallowing sightlines within seconds. Trails vanish, sound dulls, and the forest becomes an endless blur of grey. Those who make it back often admit they wandered in circles, hearing footsteps pacing just beyond view. Others whisper that the mist seemed to move with intent, leading them off familiar routes into silence. Disappearances here are as baffling as they are numerous. One case describes a hunter who radioed his position, only to be found missing hours later when his team arrived. His rifle lay propped neatly against a stump, but the man himself was gone. Search parties swept the area, yet no prints led away. It was as though he had stepped into the fog and simply ceased to exist. Local legends offer explanations that science cannot. Indigenous stories speak of guardian spirits who protect sacred lands, punishing those who trespass too far. Some describe shapeshifters that move within the mist, blending in with shadows until it is too late. For modern campers, these stories sound like folklore until they too feel the creeping weight of unseen eyes. Even experienced rangers admit unease. Several have reported strange compass malfunctions, as if magnetic fields bend and twist in certain areas. Others claim to have followed voices calling for help, even familiar ones, only to realize no one was there. Psychologists argue it's stress and sensory deprivation, but that does little to comfort the families of those who vanish without leaving so much as a footprint dot. The fog itself seems to erase traces of the missing. Unlike cases where clothing or belongings eventually surface, here the forest keeps everything. Hikers, hunters, campers, all dissolved into an atmosphere so thick it swallows sound. For searchers, the hardest part is the silence, shouting into the mist and hearing only their own voices bounce back, as if the forest were mocking them. What chills many is how selective these vanishings appear. Hundreds walk the trails without harm. But every so often the mist decides differently. Survivors describe it as if the forest were testing them, allowing some to escape, while others are never seen again. The Olympic National Forest remains a paradox of breathtaking beauty and creeping dread. To stand within its fog is to feel the boundary between worlds thinning, each step uncertain, each sound amplified. And for those who never return, the question lingers. Did they simply lose their way, or did the forest claim them for reasons we cannot understand? Yet the Olympics are not alone. Across the country in New Jersey lies another woodland infamous for both folklore and vanishings. But unlike the subtle fog of the Northwest, this forest is haunted by a legend with a name, the Pine Barrens, and the devil said to roam within it. Pine Barrens, the devil's playground. In the heart of New Jersey lies a vast stretch of wilderness known as the Pine Barrens. Covering over 1 million acres, it is a landscape of endless trees, sandy soil, and winding trails that seem to repeat themselves no matter which direction you walk. By day, the barrens feel quiet and still, but by night, they transform into something far more sinister. For centuries, this forest has been infamous not only for unexplained disappearances, but for a legend that stalks its pines, the Jersey Devil. The creature's story stretches back to the 1700s, when a cursed child was said to have been born in the Leeds family and cast into the forest. With wings, hooves, and a piercing cry, it became the region's most enduring myth. Locals claim its presence explains the strange vanishings, travelers chased by shadows, hunters stalked by unseen figures, and searchers lured deeper into the woods until they never returned. But the Pine Barrens do not rely on myth. Real. Each person a life erased. The Jersey Devil may be a story, but the grief of those left behind is not. Even seasoned explorers tread carefully in the barrens. Rangers admit to hearing unexplained cries piercing the night. Drivers report shapes darting across lonely roads, vanishing before headlights. And while many leave unharmed, enough do not that the Pine Barrens' reputation endures. What makes this forest so terrifying is not simply the legend of a winged beast, but the way folklore and reality intertwine until they are impossible to separate. Are people vanishing because of a centuries-old curse? Or do the stories exist because the land itself has always been dangerous, claiming lives long before names like the Jersey Devil were whispered? The Pine Barrens remind us that sometimes myth grows around truth like vines around stone, and, as haunting as this place is, it pales in comparison to a wilderness further north, where vanishings happen not by legend, but on a staggering, almost industrial scale. Alaska, home to the most chilling mystery of all. The Alaskan wilderness, where the earth eats the lost. Alaska is a land of staggering beauty, snow-capped mountains, endless tundra, and forests so vast they seem to stretch into eternity. But beyond its postcard landscapes lies a reputation far more unsettling. This wilderness is sometimes called America's last frontier, yet many know it by another name, the Alaskan Triangle. Here, people vanish at a rate that defies belief. Thousands every year swallowed whole by the land. The disappearances span every type of traveler. Skilled bush pilots radio their positions 1 minute only to vanish from radar the next, leaving behind no wreckage. Hunters who grew up on the land step into the trees and never return. Entire hiking groups have disappeared without leaving even a footprint. The sheer scale of these vanishings has led some to claim Alaska is not merely dangerous, it is cursed. The government acknowledges the phenomenon, noting the state has one of the highest missing person rates in the country. Harsh terrain, unpredictable weather, and wildlife all offer practical explanations. Yet even seasoned search and rescue teams admit the numbers don't add up. Planes should leave debris. Hikers should leave trails. But time and again, the wilderness keeps its secrets. One chilling example occurred in 1972 when a plane carrying U.S. Congressman Hale Boggs vanished while flying from Anchorage to Juneau. Despite one of the largest search operations in American history, spanning weeks and involving dozens of aircraft, not a single scrap of wreckage was ever recovered. How could an entire aircraft simply vanish without trace? Locals have their own answers. Native legends describe the land as alive, a hungry force that reclaims those who wander too far. Some speak of mountains that shift shape, confusing travelers, or spirits that lure the lost deeper into the trees. Others believe portals or energy anomalies twist time and space in the triangle, pulling the missing into realms unseen. Survivors of near disappearances tell unnerving stories. A hunter once claimed he became trapped in a sudden fog that muffled all sound. Hours later, he stumbled back into camp, convinced he'd only been gone 20 minutes. Another described lights flickering above the trees, silent, hovering, before waking up miles away from where he had been. These accounts echo reports from forests across the world, from Romania to the Pacific Northwest, suggesting something universal may lurk in wild places untouched by man. But what chills many most is the scale. A hiker vanishing in a national park is tragic. A child lost in the Smoky Mountains is heartbreaking. But in Alaska, entire towns whisper of loved ones who stepped into the wild and never returned. It is not one story, but thousands woven into the very fabric of the state. The Alaskan Triangle reminds us of nature's indifference. Beauty and terror coexist here, where the earth itself seems to consume the lost. For families, closure rarely comes, only the gnawing thought that the land still holds what it took, and if a place as open and vast as Alaska can erase so many without trace, perhaps the true mystery is not why people vanish, but why we continue to seek answers in places that refuse to give them. Which brings us to the heart of the matter. Beyond legends, beyond folklore, what is it about forests that seem to consume us? Psychological patterns. Why forests consume us? After hearing these stories, one question lingers. Why do forests more than any other landscape seem to consume us? Part of the answer lies in psychology. Dense woods create what experts call liminal spaces, environments where the human mind struggles to orient itself. The endless repetition of trees, the muffling of sound, the shifting play of light and shadow, all erode our sense of direction. In such places, even seasoned hikers can feel as though reality itself is bending. Isolation deepens this effect. In cities, we are surrounded by constant noise and human presence. In the forest, silence presses in. That silence, psychologists note, is not passive, it amplifies our fears, turning a snapping twig into a threat or a shadow into a figure. The mind fills the void with stories, often drawn from folklore passed down through generations. When people vanish, those stories harden into legends of curses, spirits, or unseen forces. But what unsettles researchers is how often psychological explanations fall short. In many cases, there should be footprints, bodies, or belongings, yet nothing is found. Searchers describe dogs refusing to track, compasses spinning, or voices calling from empty air. These elements blur the line between human error and something more. Are we witnessing the failures of the mind or hints of phenomena science cannot yet explain? The contrast is striking. Science gives us rational comfort, disorientation, hypothermia, predators, accidents. Folklore offers something darker, forests, as gateways, alive and selective, choosing who stays and who leaves. Both explanations coexist because neither fully answers the question. Perhaps that is why the vanishings unsettle us so deeply, because they reveal how fragile our grasp on reality truly is. Forests have always been thresholds, places that resist human control. We cut roads, we build trails, but still, the wilderness remains wild. And within that wilderness, people vanish in ways that logic cannot easily contain. Whether it is psychology or something stranger, the result is the same. Families left without answers, and landscapes marked forever as cursed dot. As we leave these stories behind, one truth becomes clear. Forests are not just places of beauty and escape. They are mirrors of our fears, testing our sense of safety and reminding us that the world still holds mysteries we cannot solve. Which leads us to our final reflection, because the haunting power of these vanishings is not in the forests themselves, but in the silence they leave behind. Reflection and haunting. Farewell forests are places of wonder, but they are also places of silence, and silence, as we've seen, can be the most terrifying sound of all. From the Black Hills to Alaska, from New Jersey to the Smokies, the stories we've explored remind us that beauty and danger often share the same trail. These vanishings are not just statistics or ghost tales, they are real people, real families, and real mysteries that remain unsolved. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that the forests are still there, waiting. Trails remain open, paths well trodden, yet with every step lies the possibility of stepping into the unknown.